What's good? It's November 7th, 2024, and this is a reading blog. Annihilation by Jeff VanderMeer. I saw the movie. Even though I didn't know too much about his work at the time, I really appreciate Alex Garland. I saw Civil War this year, and I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. Since this is book one of the Southern Reach series, and because she's small, I thought I would dive in and see what this is all about, because recently he just came out with a surprise fourth book of the Southern Reach series called Absolution, and the cover looked really cool, so I picked it up, read about it a little bit. I don't want to spoil too much for myself. And so then I decided to grab this, and it's the 10th anniversary edition. It is the US version. I got a book clip yesterday. What the hell is this called? Flip clip. So we're going to do this. We have just met the newest group of people on an expedition to Area X. Basically, the plot of the book and the movie is a group of 4 women get sent to Area X to investigate, and they find things. Things have happened, and as you can tell by the cover, this is an animal. She's a hog, I'm pretty sure. The animals are affected, the forest is affected, nature, but we don't know what the cause is. And quite honestly, I don't remember too much from the movie, so I'm excited to rediscover the plot points of this story in this book. I'm really excited to read a small book. I don't know, in the last week, I finished 2 books. One was, average length, probably like 300 pages. The other was not as long, and the font was pretty big. So it might have had almost the same amount of pages, but it was like a quick read. I finished that one in a couple days. I would have finished it faster, but the election was on Tuesday, and that was a little distracting. So that is part of the reason why I picked up this book and also Armada by Ernest Cline, because I loved Ready Player One. Yes, I'm going to read Ready Player 2, but they didn't have it at the bookstore, so I grabbed Armada because it's a one-off lone novel that I can read. We meet 4 people going on this expedition. We have a psychologist, an anthropologist, a biologist, and a surveyor. I don't know what a surveyor does. They survey. We are reading from the point of view of the biologist. We don't know anyone's names yet. All we know is that they have a black box that's attached to their belts, and if it turns red, they need to get to safety within 30 minutes. Don't know what causes that to go off, we just know they have it. They're eating basically like astronauts, but they've been told that they could live off the land if they needed to. Now, just from the cover, I'm pretty sure they can't. Let's see what's going down. So Ms. Biologist has just told us that she's not going to say anyone's names because that would represent who they are on the outside and not who they are in Area X. That's number 1. Number 2 is she's not going to tell us because only the surveyor would last more than the next day or 2. That's crazy. But does the biologist survive? That's the question. So they're going to lose 2 of their crew, one of them being Jean Rodriguez. We're on page 9, and she's telling us that half of the crew is not going to make it. And I can't tell if she's letting us know that she's also not going to make it, or if she's just saying... So nobody has any real personality yet, which is very interesting. It feels like we were just thrown into the story. There's no real background. We get a little bit through the eyes of the biologist, of course. Still no names. I don't know if we'll ever get any. Probably not. And we're just thrown into this situation. We don't know much about Southern Reach, which is the company that sends people out on these expeditions. They are the 12th expedition. Many, many other people have died before them. And if they die in Area X, it might take a while, maybe a span of even 18 months, but they will reappear on the outside. They won't be alive. At least they'll reappear. So they didn't vanish. Also, they found a hole in the ground that everyone is calling a tunnel, which kind of makes sense, but it's a stairwell down to somewhere, and the main character, Miss Biologist, has this strange inclination to call it a tower, even though it is going underground. Kind of like Silo. She finally tells the rest of the group this is what she feels it should be called. One of the others just says, well, if it makes you more comfortable, you call it whatever you want. The group finally decides to descend into the basement of hell. The tunnel, as some of them call it, but the biologist, calls it the tower. She continues to do so. She's overthinking everything. I mean, a lot of this section is just commentary. It's thoughts. It's also a description of what's going on around them. They're trying to figure out what this place is. It's very dark. The first person to go down has to climb in backwards with a gun on her back. They get down to the first level. Ooh, level. Ooh, building. What? Maybe this is a tower after all. Let's investigate. She sees vines leading down another stairwell. She gets closer and realizes there are words etched into the wall, coming out 6 inches from the base. Since there is no linguist, the biologist takes it under her own control. She says, this could be organic. This could fall within my purview. She's feeling things. Okay? She's a Long Island medium. She gets closer and realizes, even though it's not written in English, she can read it. What? What does it say? Let me tell you. Where lies the strangling fruit that came from the hand of the sinner? I shall bring forth seeds of the dead to share with the worms that. Then the darkness took it. Words, the anthropologist said. The anthropologist, she's getting on my damn nerves. I'm about ready for her to go. And it's only page 23. Well, that's annoying because it doesn't finish the phrase. Ooh, she says in her thoughts, shady as hell, the biologist, after the anthropologist just said, words. The biologist thinks, yes, words. What are they made of? The surveyor asked. Did they need to be made of anything? Oh shit, the biologist is getting sassy in her thoughts here. Do they need to be made of anything? I mean, they exist. The biologist is reading these words, right? She figures out that the words are written in fungi. Don't know how, don't know why. But in the process, even though danger is all around them, let's get real close to whatever the fuck this strange thing is. It opens up and basically spits in her face. And there are tiny little molecular spores that go up her nose. No one else around her notices. Just her. And she's like, oh my god, thank god nobody noticed. Thank god, they totally built it's fungi. It's fungi, everybody. It's made of fungi. The words are made of fungi. I don't know what's going on, but they're made of fungi. And then she's like, oh my god, we're not gonna have a cure to this back at the camp. After she's already been having some kind of strange psychic situation. Now she got spores in her body, so that's really good. And we're only on page 26. Some fishy things are happening. They get out of the tunnel. They're, having dinner, chatting, actually laughing for once, or having cordial conversation at least. Then something weird happens. I forgot to mention that the psychologist is the oldest of the group and the leader of the expedition, and also had to hypnotize them, and even hypnotize herself, in order to cross the border into Area X. When they awoke, they had all this gear on them, and they had to, in a few minutes, realize where they were. They knew they were going on this mission, they trained for it, and now, because of the spores in the biologist's system, it has messed her up a bit. She is just overthinking so much, it's just driving me crazy, all these additional thoughts that are so unneeded. But it's okay, it's just part of the storytelling. I get it. Well, the other two, they snap into some hypnosis when the psychologist says something. She says, consolidation of authority, and the two of them they perk up and they're like, "Root." So in response, the biologist, nothing happens. She doesn't do nothing, but she sees the other two do that, so she goes as well, to blend in, because nobody knows that she got spores in her. Well, apparently the spores messed up her ability to become hypnotized, so now she has to fake it. Great. The psychologist we now can get a glimpse into her process, and in order to not get any pushback on the plan for tomorrow's adventure back down into the hole, is what I can call it, she hypnotizes them. And the biologist goes along with it, even though she can hear it. But now we get to finally hear the words of the hypnosis. She's basically saying, you are going to agree with my plan of action, but it's going to be as if we discussed several options. You're going to feel calm and satisfied about this. We're going to go down there. We're not going to take any undue risks. Let's see. You will trust your colleagues completely and feel a continued sense of fellowship with them. When you emerge from the structure, anytime you see a bird in flight, it will trigger a strong feeling that you are doing the right thing, that you are in the right place. When I snap my fingers, you will have no memory of this conversation, but will follow my directives. You will feel very tired, and you will want to retire to your tents to get a good night's sleep before tomorrow's activities. You will not dream. You will not have nightmares. So now we've got another layer. We're already in this strange place, with strangers, with strange spores, and now a strange bitch hypnotizing us. But the biologist is not hypnotized. And we know from page 9 that this hypnosis bitch is not going to make it. Yeah, unfortunately. She and the anthropologist are going to be gone girled. They wake up in the morning and the anthropologist is gone. According to the psychologist, she left with only what she needed to get back to the extraction point and a few papers to tell their superiors at Southern Reach about their progress. The question is the psychologist telling the truth? Did she leave on her own volition? Did she leave per the suggestion of the psychologist? Was she killed in the night and extracted? Was she kidnapped in the night and extracted? Was she taken by a creature and is going to somehow become part of the land? We're going to walk by a tree and she's going to pop out part of the tree? We have yet to see. So they're going back down into the tunnel, which now the psychologist is also referring to as the tower. But the psychologist wants to stay at the top. Convenient. The biologist and the surveyor go down into the tower. Miss Biologist puts her hand on the wall, and since she wasn't part of the hypnosis, because during that part, psychologist told the others that everything was made of stone, and coquina, whatever that is. No offense to that material. I don't know what it is. So the biologist, Natalie Portman, she can see, or feel rather, that there is a heartbeat in the wall. These walls are not made of stone. These walls are made of a living organism. They are descending into the belly of a beast. Okay, so what's happening now is this. The surveyor and the biologist have gone down the tunnel. There's a lot of descriptions of what this tunnel looks like, what is happening. If you want to read it. But to sum it up, there's some nasty-ass slime on the floor with specks of red like blood. They look a little bit closer and they realize that those red specks are like microorganisms because they're swimming around in that viscous. And they feel like there's something down there, like someone, possibly. They go down further. The biologist sees the body of the anthropologist. It's completely destroyed. It's like becoming one with the tower. Something green is coming out of its mouth. They're gone. They're gone. And then she gets a vision. It's not explicitly said that it's a vision, but from the way she describes it, that's what it is. She sees the psychologist waking the anthropologist up in the middle of the night. They both go down to the tower. They go down there. She gives some kind of suggestion to the anthropologist, which prompts the anthro to try to grab a sample from something, possibly a beast, a monster, that's even further down from where the anthropologist was found. And in the process, she is killed and devoured. And the biologist says, and probably in agony, okay, now the cats are fighting. Can we please, there's plenty of room for the both of you. All right, we're on page 64, so I'm going to keep reading. All right, I'm about to get into chapter 3, but I wanted to do a quick update before then. Basically, the psychologist is gone. They climbed back up to the top of the tunnel, or the tower, and she's disappeared. They get back to the camp. She's taken half of the supplies and half of their guns. Great. So now 2 people are gone. One is dead. One is presumably dead, but possibly just ran away, maybe extracted. The biologist and the surveyor are not really getting along. They were cordial just a day before, but the biologist is trying to snap the surveyor out of this hypnosis, telling her that I am immune to the hypnosis. The psychologist is trying to control us, and the surveyor doesn't really believe her. You know, back at camp, they're still like having this really strange tension. All the while, the biologist is telling this story about her husband who has passed away from cancer. And then we find out that her husband was on the 11th expedition. The expedition right before this one. When he came home, he wasn't himself at all. He was strangely, unnervingly calm and melancholy, which is not his personality at all. The biologist is an introvert, while he is an extreme extrovert. He feeds off of the energy of other people, and she thought that's why their relationship worked, because they were exact opposites, and whatever one didn't have, the other did, and it just worked. But over time, their marriage started to deteriorate, and especially when he came back from his expedition, which he just randomly appeared in the kitchen, in the fridge, devouring food one night. I'd be so freaked out if my man came back after months of being gone, and he's just acting like as if nothing is wrong. So they go on, they have a little sex, they have a little breakfast, they read, they enjoy the rain, and that night she's like, no, this is not my husband, I need to do something about this. And she calls the Southern Reach, and she has them come to pick him up. They pick him up, They're scared of him. They don't know what's going on. He gets put in isolation. She visits him for 6 months, separated by glass and a mask. And it just feels like she's lost him already. And then eventually he dies of cancer. And the rest of his troop from his expedition also die of cancer. So somehow, knowing all of this, she contacts Southern Reach and wants to be part of the next expedition. Now, she's a biologist, so she is certainly qualified, and they have had no one on an expedition that was connected to someone else that was on a different expedition. You get what I'm saying? So they're intrigued. So they put her through the process, and that's how she ends up on the 12th expedition. Now, this tension between the surveyor and the biologist comes to a head when the biologist tries to convince the surveyor to not go back to the tower, but go to the lighthouse. And the surveyor, being ex-military, she's like, well, the lighthouse has great lines of sight. There's supposedly weapons in there. I'm not going to go to the lighthouse. Absolutely not. And the biologist is like, I can see the psychologist is there, and I need to go there. And the surveyor's like, I'm not going with you, girl. And the biologist says the words of hypnosis that the psychologist used before. And because she's not the psychologist, it doesn't work. The surveyor is like, what the fuck? You just tried to hypnotize me just so you could get what you want? Bye. So the biologist has to venture out to the lighthouse by herself. And that's where we're at. Okay, I've been reading this book for hours, and I can't decide whether I like it or not. I do know that I want to make it to the end, because I'm curious to see where this goes. But quite honestly, I would not want to live in this character's head. The biologist, the main character, Miss Natalie Portman in the movie, she just has so many thoughts. Many of them are almost fleeting. Like, she just has to get it out. You know how we have thousands of thoughts a second, or whatever the actual number is? We only select a few of them to say out loud. Well, we're in her head, so we're hearing them all. There's a lot of description of the landscape of what we're seeing, which is really cool. And I'm finding many quotes that I'm highlighting that I find interesting, or something I need to go back to once I get to the end of the book. But I don't know. Something about the prose is almost too serious. I know it's a high-stakes, dramatic situation, but we haven't really gotten to know any of them very well. We know the biologist the best. It's possible but that the prose is written this way because this is how she is. See, she's introverted, she's not really that emotional, she's very objective. She's stating everything that she's seeing. She's using a little bit of her past experience to inform what she is going to do, but I think most of it is like innate for the most part. As for the plot, she made it to the lighthouse after seeing 2 dolphins, one of them coming up above the water and seemingly having a human eye. Okay, the lighthouse, it's like barricaded, boarded up, basically except for the entrance. It looks like it was a battleground at some point. She's not sure what she's going to find in there. There's bodies and there's a lot of things. Okay, you just got to read it. She finally gets to this rug. She pulls the rug back and there's a hidden trapdoor. She opens the trapdoor, and what does she find in the abyss below? A humongous stack of journals. They are journals from the crew of previous expeditions, and by the sheer volume of journals, we now know that there have been way more than 11 expeditions. So she's freaking out. She gets down there, she starts digging around, she finds her husband's journal. I genuinely don't know how. She grabs a few other journals, she throws in her bag, she's going to read them once she gets back to base camp, and now she's got to find a way to get back. But before she does, she looks down from the top of the lighthouse onto the beach, and she sees the psychologist. What's gonna happen next? The psychologist is fucked up. She has cuts and gashes and broken bones, and she basically fell off the lighthouse. ... We find out she actually threw herself off of the lighthouse. She jumped because she thought something was behind her, coming for her. They have a real snarky conversation. Of course, the psychologist knew more than she had let on, and apparently she knows things about the biologist that she will not say, which is very interesting. She's also read the husband's journal, and she says she found out some very interesting things about the biologist through him, which is so shady and drama. The bitch dies. The biologist is trying to find clues on her body, and she tears a part of her sleeve off and sees that there's a big gash on her shoulder from when she was attacked by the crawler who killed the anthropologist. In that same moment, they slit her shoulder, and now she's got some kind of green gold fibrous fuzziness growing on her. The biologist is thinking, well, certain organisms and parasites, if they get in you, they can create hallucinations and make you feel like you have symptoms of schizophrenia. So it's possible that this is not some like crazy haunted land or something that we are all afraid of. In her head, in this moment, she is trying to justify things, so she's trying to find a realistic scientific explanation for what is happening. Yeah, it's a little more than that, babes. It's a little more than that. I'm on page 135, and we've just been told the meaning of the title of the book, Annihilation. Just a few pages ago, when she walked up to the psychologist yelled, "Annihilation! Annihilation!" I'm just like, okay, this bitch is unwell. And we now find out that she has a list of activation phrases, because she's a hypnotist. And the word annihilation is followed by help induce immediate suicide. So this woman, a few pages ago, was trying to get the biologist to kill herself. Oh my god. Well, it didn't quite work. Yeah, no. And then the biologist follows this up by, "We had all been given self-destruct buttons, but the only one who could push them was dead." This girl is shady as can be. She doesn't have a lot of personality going on up there, but she sure is a shady bitch. Am I going to read the rest? I don't know. Stay tuned. All right. I finished it. I finished it this morning. Let's discuss. So the biologist runs back to base camp. The psychologist is dead. The anthropologist is dead. So all who's left is the surveyor. And on the biologist's way back to base camp, the surveyor shoots the biologist in the shoulder. She feels completely threatened in her mind that somehow the biologist is in on all of this and that she's crazy. But in reality, the surveyor also had the spores go into her. I'm reading between the lines a little bit of what was said. She was infected as well, so she's starting to gain all of this paranoia. And since she's trained in the military, she is a really good shot. But not good enough. Because somehow the biologist is starting to deeply connect with the land around her. And we find out a little bit after this scene plays out that the biologist is in tune with Area X. And after she gets shot in the shoulder, she dodges another bullet and shoots the surveyor dead. But the only way she could have known where the surveyor was amongst all of the reeds and the brush is by connecting to the land to pinpoint her exact location. This is just getting crazier and crazier. So basically, now she is in a full-on existential crisis. She is trying to keep her grip on reality. We find out that she somehow made it back to the lighthouse, and this account that we are reading is what she has been up there writing for the past few days. She is going to lay this on top of the pile of journals in the lighthouse and go and try to find her husband. Oh yes, this gets even more complicated. And I just read Final Cut by Charles Burns, so now this is really like a story within a story within a story within a story. Invasion of the Body Snatchers for sure comes to mind. And if you know Final Cut, that there's thread of that. There's a thread of that in there. So the biologist is thinking to herself that it's possible that the people that reappear on the outside, like her husband reappeared that evening, are not the same people that went in. And in her husband's journal, he wrote about getting on a little boat and going up the coast. So her mission now is to leave this place and go and try to find her husband. But she also ponders if Area X has already made a copy of her, and that maybe parts of her will be found by the next expedition. But it's not actually her. It's a version of her that's made by Area X. Does that make sense? I'm trying to just dissect all this. Another thing that's like a side situation, there was a picture of the lighthouse keeper on the wall that she took off, put it in her pocket. Later on, she somehow finds her way back to the tower, goes all the way down, finds the crawler, which is the creepy monster that killed the anthropologist and the one that is writing the messages on the walls of the tower. He turns around. By the way, remember that sample that the anthropologist died getting? Yeah, the biologist studied that, and it turned out to be sections of human brain, which is perplexing since the anthropologist seemingly got the sample from off the body of the crawler. So the body is made of brains. The crawler turns around, and it has features resembling the lighthouse keeper. Oh my god. So once she gets back to the lighthouse and she's writing this whole account of the entire expedition, she ends up putting the lighthouse keeper's picture back on the wall, and she's on her way. So everyone's dead except her, but the outside people might think that those three that are dead are actually not dead, because maybe doppelgangers of themselves will end up outside the border. This is turning into a whole thing. Now, for my thoughts about this book, I think the micro-analysis of all of this is what is really interesting to me. Me reading between the lines of what's actually being told to us is what is interesting to me. The writing itself, the prose, is very straightforward. There were several lines that I highlighted that were really beautiful, and the way that he describes nature. He clearly loves to be outside, because some of these descriptions of the outdoors are so detailed. It has to come from someone that has really been out in the wilderness. Because even with my imagination, I certainly could not dream up some of the things that he is saying. It was an interesting read, but I think I didn't like the biologist. I don't think I liked the narrator. So I'm curious to know if VanderMeer's writing changes at all and evolves and becomes a little bit easier to enjoy in 2, 3, and 4. But I saw those books and they were a little big. They were at least double of this, if not triple, which I don't mind size. See, the thing is, it wasn't boring. So saying boring or dry or simple is not giving it enough credit, because it is well written. There's just something about it that I can't completely place that didn't make me want to flip to the next page, but I finished it in a day, so clearly it did make me want to flip. And I pulled my typewriter back out the other day, and this morning I started to write a little bit about this book, and in writing about it, I had a couple of revelations, one might say. I was really close to finishing last night, but I started to fall asleep, and I didn't want to half-ass the ending, so even though I had like 6 pages left, I tucked it away, and I came back to it this morning with a clear head, so I could finish it out really strong. This woman's thoughts, you could not pay me to be inside her brain. You could get lost in there. I don't think she even trusts herself. The whole time she is just, oh my god, just overthinking everything. Which is great narratively because we're getting a lot more information, but she just gets on my damn nerves. I said we certainly shouldn't trust her as readers since she's been infected, so we can't tell what's real and what's not, because she doesn't even know what's real and what's not. I do think Area X truly does have some weird shit going down. I don't think it's all in her head, but the lines are so blurred that it's hard to tell when she could be seeing what Area X wants her to see. It's also possible that she is still under hypnosis and she just doesn't know it. Maybe the psychologist put her under a spell that made her think that she had become immune to hypnosis. So I have to assume we can't trust anything she says or anything she thinks. I mean, they won't even let us know her name. Does she even know her name? She remembers her husband, who's passed, and that he was part of the 11th expedition, but what if she only remembers what she was programmed to remember? What if she isn't even a biologist? I'm asking the important questions here, folks. Hold on now, maybe I like this book more than I've let on. There are 3 other books in this series. One came out recently, Absolution, as a surprise sequel. But this first one is by far the shortest compared to the others. Do I read on? And while I was writing this, I hadn't finished the book yet. So I said, let me finish this one first and see how it ends. Now, I could leave this story here. It's a nice little ending. It wraps it up, not too tightly with that bow, but just enough to wiggle in some room if you needed to get in there. Because we could just paint a picture in our minds. Oh, she went sailing off to go find her husband. Does he find him? We don't know. Does she die? We don't know. What happens on the outside? We don't know. Does the border extend to the rest of the planet? We don't know. Do I leave all of these questions unanswered? Or do I read 3 more books? Because I've got a list, babes. I got a TBR here. Well, that's it for Annihilation. I'm gonna write a little bit more, and if I come up with any other realizations, I'll let you know before the end of this video. And if I don't, great, bye. Mahalo for watching. I'll see you next time. Good night.